You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozar. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 12th of March. Our 6 fallen heroes will be brought in through the back door. Government supporting moves to the EU to ban the cross at work. Sarkozy in the manure again. 10 killed in Nigerian bomb blast outside church. Youths stoned to death for having the wrong haircut. Keeper of Islamic Flame rises as Egypt's new decisive voice. Thought for the day, SNP targets our fallen heroes as baby killers. UK News. When the bodies of the 6 fallen soldiers are repatriated, they will be driven out of the back gate of RAF brize-norton. This will avoid the town of Carterton, which stands outside the front gates. The British National Party hope that the people of Carterton will still attend the drive-by, observe their dignified silence and honour the men who are returning. These men have more guts than the government, who sends them out badly equipped and sees them return, if not dead, vilified and jobless. The Telegraph reports that government ministers will argue at the European Court of Human Rights that it is not a requirement of the Christian faith and that employers can ban the wearing of the cross and sack workers who insist on doing so. They say that Christians are given less protection than members of other religions who have been granted special status for garments or symbols such as the Sikh turban or Kara bracelet or the Muslim hijab. It would be good to see for once our government actually arguing in favour of British culture in Britain instead of denigrating and uplifting strange religions and cultures in their place. The British government appear not to like or respect the British people when faced with choices that should be undertaken as a matter of course. We are a Christian country still, no thanks to our government and any of our so-called elite. Let's hope the European Court of Human Rights consider the rights of Christians this time. Euronews. The Telegraph has reported on President Sarkozy's visit to a dairy farm in the Pyrenees whilst on his pre-election feel-good tour. The French president was engaging in witty repartee with the farmer's wife, which resulted in Sarkozy coming off less than witty and certainly less sympathetic to the realities of farming than he would have liked. During the conversation, the farmer's wife commented that they could not afford the luxury of a 35-hour work week. Le Président replied back, "Me neither." The farmer's wife countered, "But we don't have what you have in the bank. We have nothing, we are living from hand to mouth." "And I don't own 40 hectares, okay," Mr Sarkozy said, clearly annoyed, whilst tapping her husband on the chest. Oh dear, not good, is it? World News. Youngsters in Iraq have been stoned to death for having Western haircuts. At least 14 youths have been killed in Baghdad. The stonings have taken place in militant neighbourhoods and there are lists that have been drawn up targeting youths wearing emo haircuts and clothes. The Interior Ministry in Iraq has labelled the emo cult as Satanism and ordered the community police to stamp it out. They took this rather literally, I feel. It has been reported that 10 people have been killed in the town of Jos. At least 7 people, including a pregnant woman, were killed when a suicide car bomber struck St Finbarr's Catholic Church. The blast occurred at about 10:30 a.m. when the church was having a fresh mass, having concluded an earlier one. The suicide bomber, who was driving a Vectra car, approached the gate but was stopped by church security men for a search, and he then detonated the bomb. Khairat al-Shatar organised a family, big business empire and Egypt's largest Islamist movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, all from a prison cell for more than a decade before the fall of Hosni Mubarak. Now this man is emerging as the most powerful force in Egypt since the fall of Mubarak. He is the most decisive voice in the leadership of the Brotherhood and the Egyptian Parliament, whilst he tells the Brotherhood that Islam requires democracy, free markets and a tolerance of religious minorities. On the other hand, he also says that recent elections have proved that Egyptians demand an explicitly Islamic state. Thought for the day. Well, here we are, a truly divided Britain. Thomas Ball, an SNP activist, has posted comments on Twitter, the height of social interaction in the Western world today, on the deaths of the 6 soldiers last week. His comments are repugnant and ill-informed to say the least. comprising of, and I quote, protecting their country by bayoneting 10-year-olds, and said the majority of servicemen are racist, arrogant, undereducated thugs who join up for the thrill of killing humans. In short, the 6 British soldiers who died in Afghanistan deserve no sympathy because servicemen are a bunch of child killers. Well, put that with the latest news on an American serviceman who went on a killing spree in a village called Al-Qazai, which is also unfortunately known as a Taliban stronghold. He killed 16 Afghans, some of which were children. Now, I am not excusing this soldier, or indeed any soldier, who perpetrates this sort of action in a foreign land. But he, although not named, has done 3 tours of Iraq and now finds himself amongst the 100,000 American troops in the armpit of the world, Afghanistan. I suppose the kindest thing to say is that perhaps he is suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome or has more or less become extremely psychotic. Until anyone knows more, one cannot comment. The result of this and several other incidents over the years involving American troops, and indeed ours, must not be confused with the fact that although I personally think we should never have gone into Afghanistan, with the Americans or without them, we must not be judgmental over circumstances with which the person in the street and you or I hopefully will never find themselves in. I cannot begin to imagine the grief of mothers and families on both sides for their sons, brothers, fathers and uncles, just as I feel terribly sorry for the families of those people in that village. But the cold, hard truth is, although we should not be there, we are there, and the rules of war apply. Soldiers die and civilians die also. Were we privy to learn any time in the future that although this awful act was carried out against seemingly sleeping families, this village was a well-known Taliban stronghold, and it is not unusual for Afghans or indeed Muslims to use their families as shields. This refined ruse was also used in Vietnam, sending small children carrying hand grenades to kill US soldiers. It takes a strong man to kill a small child and goes against everything the Western world stands for. One also cannot forget that whenever we have media coverage of our soldiers, they are usually walking along deserted roads, providing target practice for the Taliban and being killed by IUDs. Our so-called armoured vehicles are not armoured enough, and the UK soldiers are not as well equipped as their US counterparts. Also, I believe we had 10,000 men out there compared to the much larger numbers of US servicemen. The strain all these soldiers face must be enormous. They are usually discouraged from actually shooting anyone, being put there for hearts and minds, and I suppose should be happy just to be blown up and shot at random, just so long as they do not kill anyone. How would I react, or you, given this situation? Soldiers with guns sent to a country hated by the Muslim population, hated by the Western media, and frankly stopped from proper military action while you're there. Somewhat stressed? I would think absolutely maniacal, and I am surprised there are not more incidents along these lines, tragic though they are. One cannot defend war, but you can defend the poor souls sent out to act it out, whilst our liberal lovies are safe at home getting themselves worked up just as the anti-Vietnam protesters did. I would counsel against entering Iran or Syria, just as in hindsight Iraq and Libya have proved disastrous. It should be noted, however, that in both those countries the indigenous populations have since killed more of their own than Western forces ever did. But if Afghanistan teaches us anything, it should teach us this: West is West and East is East, and there the twain shall meet. I do not want Sharia law or mosques over here, or indeed the Muslim population over here. I believe once we have moved out of Afghanistan and keep out of other Muslim countries, there will be little need for our ever-growing Muslim population in the UK or indeed Europe. They should be happy to repatriate back to their own countries so that they can keep their own laws, religion and order, and we, or the US, should not lose any more brave young men just to delay what is inevitable in those countries: radical Muslim law. I also do not remember much propaganda against the Russians when they went into Afghanistan. The Western press was extremely quiet on that one, wasn't it? But I suppose Russian soldiers can get away with murder as well, can't they? I guarantee that as soon as we and the US leave Afghanistan, The awful thing is that they will revert to Taliban rule, the poppy growers will still peddle their wickedness, and the pipeline will still flow, and the Western world will channel millions of dollars and pounds into a country which no one has succeeded in conquering ever. The very sad thing about that is that all our fallen soldiers will appear to have died for nothing in an unwinnable war. But that is what happens. All wars kill, and history is written by the winners. So all soldiers die either on the good side or the bad side. It just depends on who is doing the writing, doesn't it? And finally, at last a way to keep those naughty squirrels from the bird table and their food. Fruit smoothies. Alison Carrick from Hampshire put a smoothie mixture in a dish for her grey furry customer, which he sipped up. She then put a straw in the next mixture in a long glass and left it out. At first this little rodent had managed to take just the top of the smoothie, but after 2 hours he had conquered the straw and was happily sucking up his drink. A picture of this little star is in today's Daily Mail, all ready for the factor. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.